Assalamualaikum and good day to all my students. So now we will continue with chapter 15, organizational culture. Okay. So after studying this chapter, okay, students or you should be able to first to describe the common characteristic of organizational culture. Compare the functional and dysfunctional effects of organizational culture on people and the organization, and then able to identify the factors that create and sustain an organization's culture, able to show how culture is transmitted to employees, able to describe the similarities and the differences in creating an ethical culture, a positive culture, and spiritual culture. Okay? And the last one, the students able to show how national culture can affect the way organizational culture is transported to another country. Okay, so what is organizational culture? Okay, if you ask someone about what he thought about the organizational culture mean, okay, so usually there is no specific definition for uh, we cannot feel, but when we see it, we know that is the organizational culture. Okay, no specific, but in this section, the author tried to propose one definition, and we like to review several related ideas. Okay, so the definition of organizational culture by this author, by the Robbins, okay, it refers to a system of shared meaning held by the members that distinguish the organization from other organizations. Okay, so this system of shared meaning includes the values, beliefs, and assumptions that characterize the organizations. Okay, right. So all the members in the organization culture will share the same meanings about the values, belief, and the characteristic of the organization culture. Okay. Six primary the characteristic seem to capture the essence of the organization's culture is first adaptability, okay, so which is the degree to which employees are encouraged to be innovative and flexible as well as to take risks and experiments. Okay. So the second characteristic is detail orientation. The degree to which employees are expected to exhibit precision, analysis, and attention to detail. Okay. The third characteristic is results or outcome orientation. Okay. So the degree to which management focus on the results or outcome rather than on the techniques and process used to achieve them. Okay. Uh, next characteristic is people and customer orientation. Okay, so the degree to which management decisions consider the effect of outcomes on people within and outside the organization. Okay, fifth, collaboration or team orientation. Okay, so the degree to which work activities are organized around teams rather than individuals. Okay. And last characteristic is integrity, the degree to which people exhibit integrity and high ethical standards in their work. Another four types of organizational culture with its own assumption, beliefs, values, artifacts, and even the criteria for effectiveness. Okay, so the first culture is the clan. The clan is usually a culture based on human affiliation. Okay, so employees within this culture, they share a bond like one big family. Okay? They have the same interest and they have a similar commitment level, and also uphold a strong sense of work normalities. Okay, right? So employees value the attachment, collaboration, trust, and support in this culture. Okay, so the second one is the adhocracy. Okay, so this is a culture based on change. Okay, so in this culture, employees have a strong commitment in creating a new standard. Okay, maintaining continuous improvement and constantly finding creative solutions. Okay. So in this culture, employees value growth, variety, attention to detail, stimulation, and autonomy. Okay. So the third one is the market culture. Okay, market culture is a culture based on achievement. Okay, so core value in this culture are based on winning and beating all rivals. Okay, hence the business strategies, measures, and procedure are aligned towards the market requirement. Okay, so employee value the communications, competence, and competition. Okay, so the last one is the hierarchy culture. This hierarchy culture is culture based on stability, right? So the work environment is considered well defined and formal. Okay, so within this culture, they have a strict protocols, rules, regulation, and policy. Okay, to ensure order, efficiency, and consistency. Okay, so employees value the communication, formalization, and routine within this hierarchy culture. Okay. So the differences between this culture are reflected in their external, okay, versus internal focus. Okay, the difference, okay, is either internal focus or external focus, and also there is their stability or flexibility. Okay, example, okay, clans, okay, the clan culture are internal focus and flexible. Okay, adhocracy are external focus and flexible. Okay, so clan are internal, adhocracy external, and both are flexible. Okay, markets are external. Okay, and basically focus on external and stable. So hierarchies are internal, focus internal, and are stable. Okay, right. So hierarchy, market is external, hierarchy is internal, and both have a stable culture. Okay, right. So a review of the prior studies. Okay, conducted on clans, adhocracy, and markets only. Okay, found that employees tend to be more satisfied with and committed to clan cultures. Okay? Market and clan cultures, okay, tend to be the most innovative. Okay, and these all three clan, adhocracy, and the market culture, okay, tend to produce the high quality products and services. Okay, and okay, actually, for the hierarchy culture, it's not enough research has been conducted. Okay, for this culture, right? Organizational culture describe how employees perceive the characteristic of an organization, not whether they like those characteristics. Okay, so this is the descriptive term, right? Um, research on organizational culture has sought to measure how employees see their organization. Okay, does it encourage the terms teamwork? Okay, does it reward the innovation? Okay, does it stifle the initiative? Okay, right. So in contrast, okay, the job satisfaction seeks to measure how employees feel about the organization's expectation, and how they practices the reward and the like. Okay, right? So that is different from the job satisfaction. Okay, right? Um, Although these two terms, okay, have that overlapping characteristic, okay, but job satisfaction is evaluative because it can be positive or negative. Okay, this is the case that job satisfaction. Okay, so this is a job satisfaction evaluative. Okay? So in contrast, the organizational culture is a descriptive, okay, in that it describes an organization, much like how personality traits describe the employees. Okay? So job satisfaction is is, is can be positive or negative, okay? But organizational culture is how it describe about the organization. Okay, uh, so one is evaluative and the organizational culture is descriptive. So organization culture represent a perception that the organization's members share. Okay, so the statement about the organizational culture are valid only if individuals with different backgrounds or at the different level in the organization describe the culture in similar terms. Okay, right? So example, the purchasing department, they can have the subculture if all the members can describe their core values in the similar term. Okay. Uh, Most organizations have a dominant culture and numerous set of subculture. Okay. So the dominant culture expresses the core values that a majority of members share. Okay, and that give the organization its distinct personality. Subcultures tend to develop in large organizations in response to common problems or experience that a group of members face in the same department or location. Right? Sometimes subculture can be so strong, okay, and however that they subtly reject the official culture and do not conform. So if organizations were composed only of subculture, so the dominant organizational culture would be significantly less powerful. It is possible to differentiate between strong and weak cultures. If most employees have the same opinions about the organization's missions and values, so the culture is strong. Okay? And if the opinions about the organizations vary widely, so that means that the culture is weak in the organization. Right? So in a strong culture, the organization's core values are both intensely held and widely shared. Okay? So the more members who accept the core values and the greater their commitment, the stronger the culture and the greater its influence on member behavior. So if employees know exactly what is expected from them, so this expectation, okay, uh, will go a lot, will shape their behavior in the organization. So this is in the strong culture organization, okay, and the strong culture will uh, a strong culture should more directly affect the organizational outcome because it demonstrates the high agreement about the organization represent. Okay, this unanimity of purpose will build the cohesiveness, loyalty, the meaning, and organizational commitment among the employees. Okay. Uh, Example, a study of nearly 90,000 employees from 137 organizations found that the culture strength or consistency was related to numerous financial outcomes when there was a strong sense of mission and high employee involvement. Culture defines the rule of game. Okay, so the function of the culture that are first, it has a boundary defining role. Okay, so it will create the distinction between the organization. Second, it conveys a sense of identity for organization's members. Okay. So that culture facilitates commitment to something larger than an individual commitment or individual self-interest. Fourth, it enhances the stability of the social system. Culture is the social glue that helps hold the organization together by providing standards for what employees should say and do. Okay? And finally, it is a sense making and control mechanism that guides and shapes employees' attitude and behavior. Okay? So this last function is particular interest to us. Right? Today's trends towards the decentralized organization makes culture more important than ever, but ironically, it also makes establishing a strong cultures more difficult. Okay? When the formal authority and control systems are reduced through the decentralization, culture's shared meaning can point everyone in the same direction. Okay? However, employees that organize in teams may show a greater allegiance to their teams and its value than to the organization. Okay, so now people work more in teams, so there is a high possibility that they values more their team compared to the organization. Okay, so a strong leadership that foster a strong culture by communicating frequently about the common goals and priority may be especially important for organization. If you have worked with someone whose positive attitude inspired you to do your best, or if you have worked with a lackluster team that drained your motivation, you have experienced the effects of organizational climate. Okay? So organizational climate refers to the shared perception that organizational members have about their organization and work environment. So the perception, they share the same perception about the organization and work environment. These perceptions are directed at the policies, practices, and procedures that actually experienced by the employees. Okay, so but when everyone has the same general feelings about what's important or how well things are working, the effect of this attitude will be more than the sum of individual parts. Okay? A positive workplace climate has been linked to higher customer satisfaction and organizational financial performance as well. Okay? So the recent theory suggests that there is a difference between espouse, which is adopted on the surface, the culture that adopted in the surface, and enacted, okay, that the culture actually put into the practice, okay, values, belief, and assumption, and that this difference has implication for how climate emerge. Okay? So in the making sense of their environments, okay, employees draw a distinction. Okay, so they draw a distinction what they hear or see being supported by organizational leaders in meeting, memos, or so on. Okay, and okay, so they put a distinction between these, okay, what they hear or they see, and what they actually see being enacted. Okay, so they will put a difference what is between the espoused, which is what they hear and see, and enacted is what they actually see, okay, being enacted, right? They put the distinction between these two. Okay. um, uh, so the climate, okay, is a function, means that what employee perceive is being rewarded, right? Um, okay, so dimensions of climates have been studied. Okay, a dozen of dimensions. Okay, it's including the innovation, creativity, communication, warmth and support, involvement, safety, justice, diversity, and customer service. Okay, so for example, if someone who encounters a safety climate will have a higher levels of job satisfaction and organizational commitment, have a better health, and be more prone to engage in safety behaviors. Okay, so the climate influence the habits that people adopt. If there is a climate of safety, everyone wears a safety gear and follows safety procedures, even if individually they wouldn't normally think very often about being safe. Indeed, many studies have shown that a safety climate decreases the number of documented injuries on the job. Okay? And the climate can also interact with one another to produce a various outcomes. Example, a climate of worker empowerment can lead to higher levels of performance in organization, and that also have a climate of personal accountability. Organizational cultures are not neutral in their ethical orientation, even when they are not openly pursuing the ethical goals. So ethical culture develop over time as they share the concept of right and wrong behavior in the workplace. The ethical culture reflects the true values of the organization and shapes the ethical decisions of its members. A researcher have developed ethical climate theory (ECT) and the ethical climate index (ECI) to categorize and measure the shared perception of the ethical work context and environment as reflected in organization policy, uh, practices and procedure. Okay. Of the 9 identified ECT climate categories, 5 more prevalence, okay, in organizations: instrumental, caring, independence, law and code, and rules. Okay, so each of uh, categories explain the general mindset, expectations, and values of the manager and employees in relationship to their organizations. Okay. So, for instance, in an instrumental ethical climate, managers may frame their decision making around the assumption that employees and companies are motivated by self-interest, egoistic. Okay. Conversely, in a caring climate, managers may operate under the expectation that their decisions will have a positive effect on the greatest number of stakeholders, which is employees, customers, suppliers possible. Yeah? Ethical climates of independence rely on everyone's personal moral ideas to dictate his or her workplace behavior. Law and code climates require managers and employees to use an external standardized moral compass such as a professional code of conduct for norms, while rules climates tend to operate by internal standardized expectation from perhaps an organizational policy manual. Okay, so organizations often progress through the various categories as they move through their business cycle. Instrumental climates are negatively associated with employee job satisfaction and organizational commitment, even though those climates appeal to self-interest of the employee and the company. They are positively associated with turnover intentions, workplace bullying, and deviant behavior. Caring and rules climates may bring a greater job satisfaction. Caring, caring, independence, rules, and law and code climates can reduce the employee turnover intentions, workplace bullying, and dysfunctional behavior. Okay. The recent research also suggests that the ethical climates um, uh, have a strong influence on sales growth over the time when there is also um, customer service climate to support it. Yeah. Studies of ethical climates and workplace outcomes suggest that ECT climates categories are likely to be found in certain organizations. Industries with exacting standards such as engineering, accounting, and law tend to have a rules on law and code climate. Industries that thrive on competitiveness, such as financial trading, often have an instrumental climate, even if they are for profit as in an environmental protection. The researcher cannot conclude, however, that instrumental climates are bad or that caring climates are good. Okay? Instrumental climates may foster the individual level successes their company needs to thrive. For example, okay, and they may help the underperformers to recognize that their self-interest is better served elsewhere. Managers in a caring climate may be thwarted in making the best decision when only choices that serve the greatest number of employees are acceptable. Okay? So by measuring the collective levels of moral sensitivity, judgment, motivation, and character of our organizations, we may be able to determine the strength of the influence that our ethical climates have on us. Sustainability refers to maintaining practices over long periods of time because the tools or structures that support the practices are not damaged by the processes. Okay? One survey found that a substantial majority of executives saw sustainability as an important part of the future success. Okay? The concept of sustainable management have their origins in the environmental movement. It also is the origins is from the environmental movement. Okay, so the process that are in harmony with the natural environment are encouraged. Okay. Social sustainability practices address the ways that social systems are affected by an organization's actions over time and how changing the social system may affect the organization. For example, okay, so farmers have been working collectively to increase water use efficiency, minimize soil erosion, and implement tilling and harvesting methods that ensure long-term viability for their farm businesses. Okay. So in the different context, 3M, the company 3M, has an innovative pollution prevention program rooted in cultural principles of conserving resources, creating products that have minimal effects on the environment, and collaborating with regulatory agencies to improve environmental effects. A sustainable management doesn't need to be purely altruistic. Okay? The systematic review of the research literature shows a generally positive relationship between sustainability and financial performance. Okay, to create a truly sustainable business, organization must develop a long-term culture and put its value into the practice. Develop that they must develop a very long-term culture, not for short term, and then they must practices lah. Okay, they put the value into the practices. Okay, not only just planning. Okay. In other words, there needs to be a sustainable system for creating a sustainability. You need a sustainable system to create the sustainability in organizations. Okay. In one study, okay, a company seeking to reduce energy consumption found that soliciting a group feedback reduced energy use significantly compare than simply issuing the reading materials about the importance of conservation. Okay, so solicit the group feedback about how they reduce the energy is more effective compared than they just pass the reading materials. Okay. Like other cultural practices we have discussed, the sustainability also needs the time and nurturing to grow. The most innovative companies are often characterized by their open, unconventional, collaborative, vision-driven, and the accelerating cultures. Startup firms often have innovative cultures because they are usually small, agile, and focused on solving problems to survive and grow. Okay. Consider digital music leader Econes, recently bought by Spotify. As a startup, the organization was unconventional, flexible, and open. It hosts the music app hack days for users and fostered a music culture. So all these are hallmarks of Spotify's culture too, making the fit rather seamless. Because of the similar organizational cultures, Econet and Spotify may be able to continue their startup level of innovation. Okay? As we have discussed, the organizational culture can provide a positive ethical environment and foster innovation. Okay? So culture can also contribute significantly to an organization's bottom line in many ways. Okay? There are many more cases of business success stories because of the excellent organizational cultures then there are success stories despite bad cultures. Okay? And almost no success story because of bad ones. Okay? So if we see the success companies um, story, it means that usually they have an excellent organizational culture. Okay? None I mean that maybe nearly to zero that we heard about the organizational successful story that have the bad culture. Okay, so means this is what does it mean that if you want to success, then probably it's as a startup you should have the very good culture. Okay. Culture can enhance organizational commitment and increase the consistency behavior which clearly benefits an organization, but we should ignore the potential dysfunctional aspect of culture, especially a strong one, okay, on organization's effectiveness. Hewlett-Packard, once known as a premier computer manufacturer, rapidly lost market share and profit as dysfunction in its GMT trickled down, leaving employees disengaged, uncreative, unappreciated, or in a polarized environment. Huh? Tak tahu. Bilak long apa? Okay, so let's see some of the major factors that signal a negative organizational culture. Okay, beginning with institutionalization. Okay, so when organization undergoes institutionalization, it becomes valued for itself, okay, and not for the goods or services it produces. Okay, it takes on life of its own. Okay, so when the company it become an institutionalization, so very strong because its name, because it's the brand, so they value they own only, okay, not about their supplier, not about the services. They don't value about the product, they value about their institute only, okay, and the founders and right. So usually the acceptable behavior, okay, in the institutionalization, okay, the acceptable modes of behavior ni may become a largely self-evident to members, okay. Uh, right, so they would like to maintain their culture to, they would like to maintain a culture about and about their self, okay. Barriers to change. Okay, next is the culture is liability when the shared values don't agree with those that further the organization's effectiveness. Okay, and they want to change. Okay, so if someone would like to want to change or want to improve for the organization effectiveness, okay, so it's quite this is the strong culture is a barrier for them to change. Okay, right. Barriers to diversity, okay, hiring, okay, if there is they hire a new employees who differ from the majority of the employees in the organization in race, age, gender, disability, or other characteristic, will create a paradox, okay. So if managers want to demonstrate support for the differences that these employees bring to the workplace, okay, but newcomers who wish to fit in must accept the organization's core culture. Okay, so newcomers have to accept the existing culture in the organization. Okay. A second, because the diverse behavior and unique strengths are likely to diminish as people assimilate. Strong cultures can become liabilities when they effectively eliminate the advantages or of diversity. Okay, yeah, so means when the company have the strong culture, then it's eliminate to they have a diversity and organization. Right? A toxicity and dysfunction. Um, so we have been discussed about the cultures that coherence around the positive set of values and attitude. Okay, this consensus can create a powerful forward momentum. Okay, however, the coherence around negativity and dysfunctional management system in corporation can produce a downward forces that are equally powerful yet toxic. Yeah. Okay, so sometimes strong culture can become a toxic to the organization, and there is a dysfunction in organization. Okay, barriers to acquisition and mergers. It's previously, okay, when management look at acquisition or merger decision, so usually they focus on the key decision factors are potential financial advantage and product energy. Okay, but in recent years, okay, the cultural compatibility has become the primary concern. Okay, you see all the things equal, whether the acquisition works seem to have much to do with how well the two organizations' cultures match up. Okay? Uh, when they don't mesh well, these two company, right? The organizational culture of both become a liability to the whole new organization. Organization's culture doesn't pop out of thin air, and once the organization establishes the culture, it fairly easily. Okay, so now we will discuss what influenced the creation of a culture and what reinforced and sustained it once in place. Okay. An organization's custom, traditions, and general way of doing things are largely due to what it has done before and how successful it was in doing it. So this thing leads us to the ultimate sources of an organization's culture, which is the founders. The founders have a vision of what the organization should be, and the firm's initial small size make it easy to impose that vision on all members. So culture creation occurs in three ways. First, founders hire and keep only employees who think and feel the same way they do. Second, they indoctrinate and socialize employees to their way of thinking and feeling. Okay? And finally, the founder's own behavior encourage employees to identify with them and internalize their belief, values, and assumptions. Okay? When the organization succeeds, the founder's personality becomes embedded in the culture. Once a culture is in place, the practices within the organization maintain it by giving employees set of similar experience. Three forces play a particularly important part in sustaining a culture: selection or hiring practices, outputs of top management, and socialization or onboarding methods. Selection, the explicit goal of the selection process is to identify and hire individuals with knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform successful. So the final decision, because it's significant influence by the decision maker, the managers will identify the candidate that will fit into organization and identify those people whose value is consistent with the organization. Okay, and also that during this process, selection process, this is also will give the information to the candidate or applicants. Okay? So those who think that there will be a conflict between their values and organizational values, so they can remove themselves from the applicant pool. Right, so this process is a two-way street. Okay, the organizations can remove the applicants if they think that the values doesn't fit with the organization, and also the applicants can remove themselves if they think that their values is not uh, fit into the organization's value. Next, the second one is top management. Okay, the action of top management, okay, also have a major impact on the organization's culture. Okay, it's through their words, behavior, the managers can establish the norms that filter throughout the organization. Okay, uh, so the top management can establish the norms by through their behavior. Okay. No matter how good a job the organization does in recruiting and selection, new employees need help adapting to the culture prevailing culture. It's a gift helps in the form of socialization practices. So socializations can help alleviate the problem many employees report when their new jobs are different from what they expected. Okay, so this is the example of problems that new hires says that they have when the job is different from the expected. Okay, so the employment. So socialization can help to alleviate this problem for new hire. Um, we can think of socialization as a process with a three stages. Okay, pre-arrival, encounter, and metamorphosis. Okay, so I will explain one by one. Okay, so socialization process. The first one is pre-arrival stage. Okay, so in this stage, we recognize that each individual arrive with a set of beliefs, attitude, and the expectation about both work and the organization. Okay, so the new arrival. Okay, before they arrive, okay, they have some expectation. Okay, right. So usually, that's why. Example, some business school they try to socialize the students to the activities and behavior that the companies desire in the future employees. Okay, so that's why they try to socialize their students to be prepared for before they enter the organization. Right, so the selection process can help inform prospective employees about the organization as well. Okay, as a whole. Okay, but upon the entry into the organization, okay, so the new member enters the encounter stage. Okay, when they enter, pre-arrival is before they arrive. Okay, and then they enter the start. Okay, they enter the encounter stage, and at this stage they will confront the possibility that expectation, okay, their expectation about the job, co-worker, boss, and organization in general might differ from the reality. Okay? So, if expectation were accurate, this stage are merely seen as early perceptions. Okay? However, if this is not often case lah, Okay, it's quite different. The expectation is same as the reality. Okay. So at this stage, okay, if the difference, okay, the expectation and reality is quite far different. Okay. At the same stage, the new member may become the disillusion to resign. Right, so and finally, okay, to work out any problem discovered during the encounter stage, the new member change or goes through the metamorphosis stage. So metamorphosis stage is the stage in the socialization process which the new employee change and adjust to the new job, work group and organization. Okay. So after they encounter the differences, so now this time they try to adjust what is their expectation and with their punya reality. Okay. They will adjust their punya uh, to they just to fit in with the job and the organization. Right? Okay. Um, So this three part of socialization process is complete when the new member have internalized and accepted the norms of the English organization and their work groups are confident in their competence and feel trusted and valued by their peers. Okay, so when they internalize and accept the norms, then this stage become completed. Okay. Um, Right, so successful metamorphosis uh, should have a positive impact, okay, on the new employees. Uh, and new employees productivity, their commitment, the organization, and reduce the propensity to leave the organization, okay, turnover. Okay, so the researchers examine how employee attitudes change during the socialization by maturing at several points over the first few months. Okay. Several studies now documented patterns of honeymoon and hangovers for the new workers, showing that the period initial adjustment is often marked by decreases in job satisfaction. Um, The newcomers may find that the level of social support they receive from the supervisor and co-workers is gradually withdrawn over the first few weeks of the job. Okay, at the first they will receive more support compare gradually this is will reduce. Okay, when everyone become return to the business as usual. Okay, so at the first stage, the first few weeks, they will we guide you, we give all the support. Okay, from over the time, this support will gradually reduce. Okay, right? So original culture derives from the founders. Okay, so this is explain how organizational cultures form. Okay, so the original culture derives from the founders. Uh, Founders philosophy and strongly influence hiring criteria as the firm grows. Okay, it comes from the founders punya philosophy and then from the selection criteria. But the criteria is based on the founders philosophy. Um, the success of socialization also depends on the deliberateness of matching new employees' value to those of the organization in the selection process and on top management's commitment in socialization programs. Okay. So top managers actually set the general climate, including what is the acceptable behavior and what is not. Employees sustain and perpetuate the culture. Culture is transmitted to employee in several forms. Okay. First one is through the stories. Stories, we said is narrative about the organizations founder rules, stories from others about the rules. The previous one, what the successful organization, how organization copy, okay, right? So and also the employees can create their own stories about how they become fit in organization, how was their first day, how was early interaction with other employees, and their first impression. So they make this story, okay, right? So the next is rituals, okay. Rituals are repetitive sequence, okay, repetitive a sequence of activities that express and reinforce the key values of the organizations, okay. So rituals, some things that we do it repetitively, okay. um right, so this is what about organization goal, okay. So but we do it we do or we say it repetitively. The next one is a symbols, okay. So symbols, examples, it's a material symbols like the layout of the headquarters or the layout of the office, the type of automobiles for the chief executive given, okay. This example of material symbols to show some the power that some CEO have, okay. Right, so fancy also is like a symbol, okay. Um, so this symbol, okay, convey to the employees who is important, okay. So the difference between the layout, the top management layout and employees layout, office layout, okay. So it's a symbol, right? So the next one is the language. Language. Many organizations they use language to help members to identify the culture, okay, uh, and help them to accept the culture and preserve it, okay. Sometimes certain organizations use terms, unique terms to describe the equipment, about the officer, key individual, supplier, customer, about products. So they have their own terms, okay. So this is how uh, uh, the culture, okay, um, transmitted to the employee through these four ways. As we discussed, the culture of an organization is set by its founders, okay, and is often difficult to change the afterward. It's true that the ideal scenario is a strong founder or founders who carefully plan the organization culture beforehand. Okay? So organizational culture usually grows organically over the time. Despite the differences across industry and cultures, ethical organizational culture shares some common values and process. Okay? So therefore, managers can create a more ethical culture by adhering to the following principles. Okay? Be a visible role model. Employees will look to the actions of top management as a benchmark for appropriate behavior. Okay? Communicate ethical expectations. Whenever you serve in a leadership capacity, minimize the ethical ambiguities by sharing a code of conduct that states the organization's primary values and the judgment rules employees must follow. Okay, so must and the ethical ambiguities try to avoid that, okay, right. So provide the ethical training, set up a seminars, workshop and training program to reinforce the organization standard of code of conduct, and then clarify what practices are permissible and address the potential ethical dilemmas, okay. The next is visibly reward ethical acts and punish unethical ones. Okay. Evaluate subordinates on how their decision compare with the organization's code of ethics. Okay, review the means as well as the ends. Provide the protective mechanism. They seek a formal mechanism so everyone can discuss ethical dilemmas and report unethical behavior without fear of reprimand. Okay? Right, so develop a positive culture. Okay? Maybe it's quite difficult to develop a positive culture, but you can see that there's a trend today that organizations attempt to create a positive organizational culture by emphasize building on the employee strengths. Okay, and next they rewards more to the employees for their ethical work rather than punish for unethical behavior. Okay, um, and also that they emphasize um, they encourage the vitality and growth. Okay, right? So they supports if they supports for individual organization that can uh, give can more effective employees. Okay, right, so they encourage this for dia punya they increase in dia punya personality or professionally. Okay, and also that but positive culture means that when you uh, the organization provide everything based on these three, but can create the positive culture. But positive culture is not you cannot say that positive culture not cure to all the unethical behavior. Okay, right? So um it depends to some industry. Okay, right? um Organizations, okay, organizations need to to be an objective, okay, to be objective and try to develop a positive culture and uh, encourage the employee. Okay? Spiritual culture, okay, so spiritual culture is the workplace spiritually is not about organized religious practice. Okay, spiritual is not about religious practice. Okay, it's not about God or theology. Okay, so this workplace spiritually recognize them that people have an inner life that nourish and is nourished by meaningful work in the context of community. Okay, that is the spiritual culture. Okay, uh, a corporate social responsibility. Okay, CSR. The concept of CSR. Okay, when maybe when you design a job, maybe you can include the CSR because the CSR is it match with the concept of organizational spirituality. Okay, right? So encourage them to do more CSR. Okay. Okay. So this is what the reason why um now can see that increasing in spirituality in the organizational culture. Okay. The five reason. Okay. Main reason. The growing interest, right? Spirituality can counterbalance, okay, between the pressure and stress uh, of a turbulent pace of life. Okay, right? So contemporary lifestyle, single parent families, geographic mobility, the temperature nature of job, new technology will create the distance between the people. Okay, right, so that's why they need a more spirituality punya job. Okay, right, formalized religion. Okay, formalized religion has a work for many people, um, and they continue to look for anchors to replace lack of faith and to feel a growing feeling of emptiness. Okay, right. So the religion, maybe some in some workers, so religion is not work, so they find some things that when they feel empty, they find something spirituality. Okay, job demands. Okay, um, uh, even the job demand is quite important, but however, they still question the workers still question about the meaning of works to their life. Okay, right. So and also the next reason is that people want to integrate their personal life value with their professional life. So they need the spirituality. Okay, and an increasing number of people that finding that material acquisition is cannot fulfill their needs. Okay, they need something else, whether uh, more materials. The concept of workplace spirituality is drawn from the previous discussion of values, ethics, motivation, and leadership. Okay, um, but this is several cultural characteristics. Okay, that tend to be evidenced in the spiritual organization. Okay, benevolence. Okay, spiritual organizations value kindness toward others and the happiness of employees and other organizational stakeholders. Strong sense of purpose. Spiritual organizations build their cultures around a meaningful purpose. Although profits may be important, they are not primarily valued. Okay, right? This is strong sense of purpose for them to be in the organization. Okay, not only based on material. Okay, trust and respect. Okay, spiritual organizations are characterized by mutual trust, honesty, and openness. Okay, employees are treated with esteem and value consistent with dignity of each individual. Okay, trust, they have a trust. Employee organization trust to the employees, respect to them. Okay, open-mindedness. Okay, spiritual organization value flexible thinking and creativity among the employees. Many organizations have grown interested in spirituality but have had trouble putting the principles into practice. Okay? Several types of practice can facilitate a spiritual workplace, including those that support work-life balance. Okay? Um, Leaders, okay, can demonstrate values, attitudes, and behaviors that trigger intrinsic motivation and sense of fulfilling a calling through work. Okay, right. So through the leaders, they grow in the spiritual through the leaders. Okay, encouraging the employees to consider how their work provides a sense of purpose can help achieve a spiritual workplace. Often this is done through the group counseling and organizational development. Critics of the spirituality movement in the organizations have focused on three issues. Okay? The first is the question of the scientific foundation. What really is workplace spirituality? Is spirituality just a new management buzzword? A second, are spiritual organizations legitimate? Specifically, do organizations have the right to claim spiritual values? Third is the question of economics. Are spiritual and profit compatible? Okay, so this the critics. Okay, so first, there is a comparatively little research on workplace spiritual. Spirituality has been defined so broadly in some sources that practices from job rotation to corporate retreats at meditation centers have been identified as spiritual. Okay? practices job rotation and corporate meditation centers. Okay, now that is considered a spiritual. Okay. A second one, to answer the second question, an emphasis on spirituality can clearly make some employees uneasy. Okay, to emphasize that. Critics have argued that secular institutions, especially business firms, should not impose spiritual values on employees. This criticism is undoubtedly valid when spiritual is defined as bringing religion and God into the workplace. Okay, right? So actually, we don't bring a religion and God to the workplace. Okay? A third, whether spirituality and profits are compatible objectives is a relevant concern for managers and investor in business. Okay? So the evidence, although limited, indicates there are. In one study, organizations that provide their employees with opportunity for spiritual development outperform those that didn't. Um, okay, we considered the global cultural values. Okay, however, focus in this is a bit narrower. Okay, how is organizational culture affected by a global context? Okay? Organizational culture is so powerful that it often transcend the national boundaries. Okay? But that doesn't mean organization should or could ignore a local culture. Organizational culture often reflect the national culture. Okay? Example, the culture at AirAsia, a Malaysian-based airline, they emphasize the openness and friendship. Okay, so um, they still wherever they operate, they still reflective a Malaysian culture. So uh, for the US company that operate globally, okay, so what they can do is that they can the US manager can be uh, should be culturally sensitive. Okay, the US can that is the dominant workforce in the business and in culture. So then we already know that they are the US that thing can influence the outcomes of the reputation. Okay, so maybe that this US manager that known as a self-absorbed and loud, okay, arrogant people, okay, can be culturally sensitive uh, to others, including talking in the low tone of voice, speaking slowly, listening more, and avoiding discussion about religion and politics. Okay? So the management of ethical behavior is one area that national culture can rub against the corporate culture. Yeah? US example, okay, US managers endorse the supremacy of anonymous market forces as a moral obligation for business organizations. Okay? This worldview sees bribery, nepotism, and favorism personal contact as highly unethical. They also value the profit maximization. So any action that deviates from profit maximization may suggest inappropriate or corrupt behavior. In contrast, the managers in developing economies are more likely to see ethical decisions as embedded in the social environment. Okay? That means doing a special favors for family and friends is not only appropriate but possibly even an ethical responsibility. Okay, so this diagram depicts the impact of organizational culture. Okay, So employees form an overall subjective perception about the organization based on factors such as the degree of risk tolerance, team emphasis, and support of individuals. Okay, so this overall perception represent in effects of the organization's culture or personality and affect the employee performance and satisfaction. With stronger culture having a greater impact. So the implication for the managers, okay, so realize that organization culture is relatively fixed in the short term. Okay, so to effect change involve top management and strategize a long-term plan. Hire individuals whose value align with those of the organization. Okay, so these employees will tend to remain committed and satisfied because their values align with the organization. Okay, so not surprisingly, these feet have considerably higher turnover rate. So higher uh, more individual values fit with the organizational fits. Okay. Understand that employees' performance and socialization depends to a considerable degree on their knowing what to do and not to do. Train your employees well and keep them informed of changes to their job roles. You can shape the culture of your work environments sometimes as much as it shapes you. Okay? All managers can especially do their part to create an ethical culture and to consider spirituality and its role in increasing a positive organizational culture. Beware that your company's organizational culture may not be the transportable to other countries. Okay, so understand that cultural relevance of your organization's norm before introducing a new plans or initiative overseas. Okay, so that's all for this chapter. Thank you very much. Goodbye.